Warmer for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined by one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to chat with him a little bit about the bracket, how much chalk he sees this season, and if this potentially has a chance to be a little bit of a replay of what we saw last season when we saw all 4 one seeds make the Final Four. We're going to ask him a little bit about the Gonzaga Bulldogs since he's out there in the great state of Washington, and we're going to have ourselves a good time seeing what he's all got on his bracket. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday. Yes, that includes the NIT games. As we hit some bank shots, we cover all of the games on this podcast, not just the NCAA tournament games, but the NIT, the Crown. Unfortunately, the CBI is canceled, but if they bring back the College Insiders Tournament, we will handicap the College Insiders Tournament. So we've got you guys all covered there, and if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_81. Keep in mind, letters DM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, and let's call it what it is. We have nothing to recap from college basketball Monday. Saw a little bit of news off the court, but I'm going to be keeping it more to the games until we reach April because, trust me, we're going to have 7 months to be able to dissect the college basketball offseason. Though I will say, the fact that Alabama is going to be dealing with Aiden Holloway, most likely not being with the team. It seems as though he is not on campus right now. He had possession of drugs. That's not great to say the least. You can have your opinion on that. I know that there were many takes on drugs and everything like that. This is a college basketball podcast, so we will let you have your thoughts as you do there. But that said, the matter of fact with the situation is that a guy that is averaging 16.8 points per game and shoots 44% for 3, most likely not going to be playing for Alabama, so that's not great to say the least, but I think that now is a great time to bring this up before we get the NCAA tournament all started, taking a look at 2 things, moneyline rollovers and just filling out your bracket differently than you have bets. Like you'll notice on the podcast that I had yesterday where I revealed my full bracket, there weren't a ton of these, but there were a few games where I just took the points with the underdog, but I did advance them in my bracket. When it comes to a larger bracket pool, you probably want to be taking bigger risks than you might with your own bankroll, because with your own bankroll, you're just betting that one game and that one game only, and you want to be just trying to play out the numbers. Meanwhile, when it comes to a bracket challenge, especially if you're in some sort of a league where you get double points for picking upsets, there are some out there, there are some where it's just standard, you get the same amount of points, whether it's a favorite or an upset, so you want to be basing that accordingly, and you might want to have a little bit of a different bracket if you are able to get like double points for upsets. And I still remember this, I was in a bracket challenge way back in the day when I was in high school where the scoring system was whatever the seed line was of the team that advanced was what you got, and it doubled with every progressive round. So let's say that you took a 16 seed to win in the first round, you got 16 points. If they won the next game, you'd get 32 points, and then you get 64 points. Meanwhile, if you picked a 1 seed, you got 1 point in the first round, 2 points in the next round. So obviously, you just want to be hooking up there a bunch of wild upsets, and you're probably going to do relatively well. So always be alert of the scoring system, and that's why I say 1 bracket per scoring system. Now, I'm not going to give you any points if you have like 27 brackets, but let's say that you've got 1 bracket for like just the normal scoring system, another bracket for a wonky scoring system that I just threw out there. That's actually the right way to go about it, so I will throw that out there as well. But that said, you just want to be playing it a little bit differently with regards to your actual bets versus your bracket itself, because if you're in a bracket league of maybe like 5-10 people, there's a little bit less of a chance that you're going to have correlated plays with some of the people that you're going up against. Now, if the bracket league has like 500 people, if you're trying to do the ESPN one where there's like 20 million brackets in there, you might want to be a little bit unique, because if you have like 1 or 2 upsets and that's it, you might have people out there on the face of planet Earth that have the same exact bracket as you, so sometimes you do need to take a few chances, like I did that with Hofstra against Alabama, and hey, alright, looking a little bit better with Holloway. most likely not being out there for Alabama. But that said, instead of taking the money line with Hofstra, I just have taken the points with regards to my bet, but I did advance Hofstra on my bracket. Those are the sorts of things I'm talking about. So you do want to play that a little bit differently. And then when it comes to the futures market as well, playing a rollover versus futures, I think is interesting as well. And sometimes you're going to find some mispriced teams. Like I saw on DraftKings, Clemson was plus 310 to win the region. Probably want to be taking the money line rollover right there. Like, that's absolutely something that you want to be doing. Meanwhile, if you found like Florida 10-1 to make the Final Four, yeah, you probably want to be taking the future. So always look for the clerical errors there. But I do think that when it comes to taking a money line rollover, typically this is the best way to go about it. Sometimes you're going to get a rogue price, and if you think that there's going to be a whole bunch of chaos and that the like 1 or 2 seed that you're getting a Final Four price on, that they're going to be facing a bunch of patty cake teams, and there's going to be a bunch of chaos, and they might have like St. Peter's in the Elite Eight, you probably want to take the futures price because you're going to be getting less and less value game to game as you get more and more upsets. But let's say that you think that there's going to be something halfway traditional, betting a money line rollover rather than futures, I think is the best way to go about it because you have options with the money line rollover. Whereas with a future, you're just sort of stuck with it. Sure, you can hedge out, you can do some various things to try to be able to maximize a little bit of value, but that involving a lot more bets, putting a little bit more on the line. Meanwhile, with the money line rollover, what this is, just to explain it first things first, is instead of betting like $100 on insert your favorite future here, you bet $100 on the money line of the team that you think is going to reach a Final Four title game, however far you think that they're going to go. And then with each progressive round, you roll it over. So, I mean, with a 1 seed, for example, you're probably not going to get much. Like Michigan, you're going to be laying $100 to probably get back like your original $100 plus like $1 or something like that. So then you take the $1 in the round of 32 and roll it over. And if you want to bypass round number 1, you're probably not going to be losing out on too much, especially if you're taking one of those 1 seeds, considering they're all 20 plus point favorites. So there's that aspect of things. But instead of just having a future, you just roll it over. And what that allows you to do is, let's say that there's some sort of an injury. Like Duke is obviously dealing with injuries with Cameron Foster along with Patrick Ngongba. Let's say that you have a money line rollover here on Michigan, for example. Yaxel Lendeborg, after round number 2, he was riding the roller coaster and breaks every bone in his body. Guess what? You're not stuck with that Michigan future. You can decide, hey, I am going to walk away from the table with my winnings. Probably not going to be too much after 2 rounds of Michigan, but hey, you've got winnings. You can decide to take yourself out to a nice Texas Roadhouse dinner, which is something that I definitely would be doing. You can bet it on someone else. You can still roll it over if you still feel confident in them. It gives you the chance to be able to do that. Typically, your payout is going to be a little bit better as well, especially if chalk holds the form. So if Michigan is going up against the 8 seed in the round of 32, the 4 seed in the Sweet 16, and then they face the 2 seed in the Elite 8, and then in the Final Four, they're facing off against like another 1 seed. You're going to be able to maximize your value on that because you're going to be able to get better money line prices than if they're facing off against like St. Peter's in the Elite 8, like North Carolina was a few years ago. So I think that that's a good way to be looking at things, and I think that that's important to be keeping in mind this time of year. So just wanted to lend those couple nuggets of food for thought for you guys as we are approaching such a great time in college basketball. And like I said, every game, every day, that includes the NIT. That's all going to be covered here. And coming up next, we've got ourselves a great guest, Curtis Rogers. He does amazing work over at 710 CL Sports. We're talking Gonzaga. We're talking his bracket. We're talking about if chalk is going to be holding the form and so much more right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Peterson, now a part of the Peace and Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Curtis Rogers aboard. He does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he is very hard at work, taking a look at all that we've got here in college basketball and getting set for the baseball season, much like myself, as he does pre- and post-game hosting with the Seattle Mariners. Additionally, I know that he had a nice hand in some of the Seattle Seahawks coverage as they were able to win a Super Bowl, and we'll see if he'll be covering some more championship teams. He's able to be found on the old Twitter/X at A Kid From Kent altogether. Same handle for his Instagram. And Curtis, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, always happy to hop on with you, but this is one of my favorite hits I do with you each year, unpacking the bracket, looking at all the matchups across this month that is going to determine who cut down the nets at the end of the season. I'm so excited to dive into this. The bracket reveal is one of my most favorite days on the sports calendar. It's here, and the next few days, certainly excited to dive into every matchup, get all the potential matchups with you. And I'm just so excited. I know you are too, but what a time this is in college basketball.
Oh, no doubt about it. And if you look at the point spreads out there for these first round matchups, they're thinking that it's going to be a very chalky first round. And I want to get your thoughts there. Do you think that there is going to be a little bit more chaos in the first round? Or do you think that's going to be much like what we saw last year, where maybe you'll get like a Drake over Missouri style upset, but we really didn't have a lot of fireworks last season?
Yeah, and I'm looking at just how much these higher seeded teams are favored by looking at all the teams on the 1 seed and 2 seed line. I don't believe there is a point spread lower than the UConn Furman one at 20.5, which, I mean, gosh, they're just projecting blowout after blowout after blowout with those teams at the top of the bracket. And look, when NIL was a thing, everybody kind of wondered, will the strong teams get stronger? Will the weak teams get weaker? And I don't know about the weak teams getting weaker, but certainly the strong teams have gotten stronger. And I feel like there is a significant gap this year between the who's who of this tournament. Probably every team on the 1 seed line, Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and Florida. I mean, Florida having won the national championship a year ago. And then, you know, you look at the mid-majors getting into the dance this year. There just is not a lot of them. So I think last year, obviously, with 4 number 1 seeds making it to the NCAA or making it to the Final Four, it was a rarity because we haven't seen that hardly ever in the history of the tournament. But would I be shocked if it happens again this year? No, I would not. I think this group of number 1 seeds, very battle-tested, lots of talent among them. I would be more shocked than not if any of them missed out on the Final Four. I feel like Florida maybe is the most vulnerable of the 4, but they're all really stout and playing some really good ball this time of year.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned teams playing some really good ball, as we did see on Sunday a pair of teams that won their conference tournaments in Purdue and Vanderbilt not get 1 seeds. And how much do you take a look at these teams? Because sometimes there's the old debate of rest versus rust. There's the debate of, oh, do you want to be tired going into the NCAA tournament, what have you? And I feel like it's a very much a mixed bag. We saw Florida win the SEC tournament last year, and then they go on to be able to win the title. And this year, Arkansas won the SEC tournament. How do you take a look at those power conference title winners and how they might fare this year? Because it feels like it's been very much a mixed bag over the last few.
Yeah, I'm glad Purdue was able to stack some wins under their belt. They've had a pretty up and down go of it in conference play this year. Obviously, having the preseason expectations that they did, they're the number 1 team in the country in the preseason AP poll. So everybody thought they had, title aspirations this year. And I don't know if I'd say that they are completely out of it in terms of a chance at a title, but I thought it was good of them to kind of put the roller coaster of the regular season behind them, stack a few wins in Chicago, and enter the NCAA tournament on a high note. I think Vanderbilt has been a really interesting team this season, and they get McNeese in the opening round, and then they will play the winner of Nebraska and Troy. I think Vanderbilt could easily find themselves playing in the second weekend of the tournament. Nebraska has not had the second half of the season that they did in the first half when it was them, when it was Miami, when it was Arizona, those 3 teams that were left as the unbeatens across college basketball. So I like Vanderbilt. I like Purdue to at least make it to the second weekend of the tournament. The other power conference winners, I mean, Arizona beating Houston twice this season, one a true road game, once in a neutral site. That's pretty impressive. They also beat Iowa State in one of the games of the year, Jaden Bradley hitting that turnaround shot at the buzzer. They just seem to beat everybody. The only losses they've had this season were at Fog Allen on Big Monday, which no one has ever beaten Bill Self on, and then also to a Texas Tech team that still had JT Toppin. They don't have JT Toppin anymore. So the losses that Arizona has had this season are, I think, pretty explainable. And the fact that they've just kind of mowed down everybody this year, that's a team that, I mean, it's crazy to me, and maybe not so crazy if you look at, the advanced metrics of it all, but just in terms of regular season resume, winning their conference the way that they did, outright regular season and conference tournament champions, only having 2 losses all year. Their non-conference was sparkling. They had so many key non-conference wins. I was really surprised, Greg, that they did not get the number 1 overall seed.
Yep, I was a little bit as well, but certainly with Duke, they have been rock solid this season as well. And that leads me into something else as well. You mentioned the 1 seeds and how stout they are. I do feel like there's a little bit of concern for some of these. I think the obvious one is Florida getting blown out in the SEC tournament. And frankly, all season long, the 3-point shooting has not been there for Florida. They're a team that I think is a little bit vulnerable. And Arizona has not shown a lot of warts whatsoever. Let's call it what it is. I mean, you just went through it with Arizona. That team looks very rock solid. Not a lot of concern. But that said, with Michigan, I didn't love what I saw out of them the last few weeks of the season. And for Duke, they were able to get by in the ACC tournament. But how concerning is it to you, the fact that Caleb Foster is right now dealing with the injury?
Yeah, that's going to be huge. I think that is one that is certainly going to have a big impact here coming into the NCAA tournament. Right now, you look at what he has been dealing with, that fracture in his right foot, that's going to be huge. Obviously, their arch rival dealing with big injuries of their own, UNC. Duke right now, even with the injury to Caleb Foster, I think they're going to be in a good spot. I think they can at least make it to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, depending on, who they get matched up against in the Final Four. And, look, there's a possible rematch of last year's Final Four with Houston taking on Duke, potentially, if they meet in Indianapolis. Other teams that could come out of that South region. You mentioned Florida. They have been hot and cold this year. They're very hot right now. They started off very cold this season. But looking at other teams in that South region, Illinois has been a really good team this season. That's one definitely worth keeping an eye on. But I think right now, just Duke and the play that they've gotten from the Boozer twins has been just head and shoulders above what everybody else has been getting this year. I would have Duke going all the way to the national championship game with or without Caleb Foster. And I think UConn, maybe in their own region, can give them a fight. Michigan State as well. It always feels like Michigan State and Duke are in the same region. Those two teams have met in the Elite Eight, I think, a million bajillion times. Not really buying into Kansas as the 4 seed. Darren Peterson's too much of an unknown. St. John's winning the Big East tournament. Definitely worth keeping an eye on them as well. Rick Pitino, he coaches his best this time of year. But right now, I would say Duke still very much in the driver's seat, even though they're dealing with a big injury like that.
Yep, I think that's very well said by you, and it is going to be interesting to see how this all gets sliced and diced, as Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and I think that's going to be interesting to see what we get out of Gonzaga as well, a team that we've talked about a lot. They've had their ups and downs, very few losses, but one of them came by 30-plus points to Michigan, one of them came to Portland, which I'm not sure how that happened, but they lost to Portland at one point this season. How do you take a look at them as a 3 seed here in the NCAA tournament? They should be able to get by Kennesaw State in the first round, but after that, I think it's a big question mark, and I think that you'd agree with me on this. What they get out of Braden Huff, if anything at all, might dictate that.
Yeah, Braden Huff is going to be the key to their season, and I don't know if he is going to be with them the first weekend of the tournament. It looks like right now, potentially the Sweet 16 is the earliest we could see him make his first game off the injured list. To me, I think if they can get Braden Huff that is maybe 85 to 90% of what he was pre-injury, I think that's going to actually benefit Gonzaga well. I think they have the horses to run with a Purdue if they can get that far, Miami or Missouri as well. And now BYU could be a tricky matchup. BYU had a tough go of it in the Big 12, but obviously they have the most talented player in that entire region, A.J. Dabansa, somebody who is probably going to be taken within the top 2 or 3 picks in this year's NBA draft. That side of the region, I think Gonzaga has a very good shot at kind of weaving their way through. Obviously, Arizona being what they are, I think they're going to make it to at least the Sweet 16, maybe even the Elite Eight. One team to watch out for in that West region, though, is going to be Arkansas. They're playing really well. And then obviously Darius Acuff. I mean, what more can be said about the kid? He's playing phenomenal right now. So lots of talent in that West region for sure. But Gonzaga, I think they have a very strong case if they can get a healthy Braden Huff back to be in the mix in the Sweet 16, maybe even in the mix in the Elite Eight.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that is going to be so much fun to take a look at and see how that's all sliced and diced, as Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I have to ask you about this. Is there any double-figure seeds that you decided that you were going to roll the dice on to win a game or two in the NCAA tournament? Because we just talked about it. The favorites, the lower-seeded teams, it feels like they're big favorites this year. But did you decide, hey, maybe one or two of these teams, they might be ripe for a first-round upset?
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple. I mean, VCU only being a 2.5-point dog to North Carolina, that's an interesting one to me. Definitely have that one circled as a potential upset. And then Akron against Texas Tech. We just talked about the JT Toppin injury and how he was obviously the most important player on that Red Raiders ball club. How are they going to respond in these do-or-die scenarios? Akron made the NCAA tournament a year ago. They played Arizona. They've been, great shooters from deep over the last couple of years. So looking at that VCU game, looking at Akron. Another one I'm going to watch out for, South Florida taking on Louisville. I think that USF Bulls team, they like to get into a rock fight, so definitely worth watching out for them as well. Those are the three double-digit seeds I will be keeping a very keen eye on, Greg. I don't know if we're going to see as many double-digit upsets as we usually see in the tournament. That's just kind of how things have shaken out here in this NIL era, but I can dream, right? Everybody can dream about these crazy upsets. We're not talking Oral Roberts, what was it, a few years ago, as a 15 seed. We're not talking St. Peter's as a 15 seed. Nothing like that, but I think we'll see a few 11 seeds give the 6 seeds a run for their money, some 12 seeds, but I don't know. I don't see any deep Cinderella runs from team seeded 13 or higher.
Well, Oral Roberts made me very, very happy a few years ago. I will always have that one, and I do not have any 15 seeds being able to advance. I do have a 13 seed in Hofstra, so there's that, and I'm going to put you on the spot. You can choose to decline if you'd like, but Curtis, who do you have cutting down the nets, and who do you have making the Final Four?
My Final Four looks like this. I've got the Duke Blue Devils making it to the Final Four. I have got in the South region, the Houston Cougars making it to the Final Four. Arizona coming out of I'm all about that rematch. One of the craziest endings to a game you'll ever see last year. Arizona coming out of the West. And in that Midwest region, I've got Michigan. I've kept it mostly chalk here, 3-1 seeds and a 2 seed. And then in the final, I have got Arizona taking on Duke in a 2001 rematch of the national title game. Look, you can call me a homer or whatever, but with my eyes and what I've seen this season, Arizona to me has been the best team from start to finish. I believe they spent the most time at number one of any team this year. I think the Wildcats get it done. They're cutting down the nets in Indianapolis.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get. I will say, for those that listened to the podcast yesterday, they know I am very, 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 very high on this Purdue team and think that they are on a mission, and we're on a mission to be able to get you guys as great of insights as possible. And Curtis, he always gets that job done. He does such great work out there in the city of Seattle, doing college basketball, football. Baseball is going to be starting in just over a week. He's dialed in on it all. And Curtis, let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, Greg, lots of good stuff here in Seattle, especially with now NBA expansion potentially happening in our neck of the woods, in your neck of the woods, in lovely Las Vegas, too. So there's all sorts of hot rumors about that. We had Shams Charania on this week to talk about all that. And then obviously, NCAA tournament will be covering the Zags, be covering Seattle U in the NIT. Shout out to the Redhawks playing some postseason basketball, and then also unpacking where the Huskies and Cougs can go this offseason. So just a lot of great basketball action up here in the Northwest over the next couple of weeks. and obviously going to be keyed into these games over the next month or so. It's going to be a blast, Greg. Really appreciate you having me on. Can't wait till our next conversation as we dive into this bracket.
And the next conversation might be baseball as well. First pitch is a little bit over a week away, so that is going to be tremendous. Curtis, he does such excellent work looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball and so much more. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Curtis for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. Here, love you, Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by Curtis Rogers. He does such amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know he's doing a little bit of everything, getting set for the Seattle Mariners upcoming season. He does a great job on the football front and so much more. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GUNet_D1. Going to be very simple on this one. We'll go with the first four games out there in Dayton first, and then we're going to go in time order with the NIT games as well. So that'll keep things all nice, clean, and easy. Let's get things started. 661, 662. It is Howard, and they're taking on UMBC. UMBC between a pick 'em to a 1.5 point favorite. Total is 139.5. I did set a total here of a 137.5. I do like the under. Have a Howard team that's been so dominant on defense and games played away from home. They are number 2 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis with this UMBC team. They've got very solid metrics as well. 85th in the country in terms of points per possession on offense, 45th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis on defense. And Howard, a little bit more of an up-tempo team, 111th in terms of total possessions per game. UMBC has really played slower than they have in the past, 281st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that in this case, you need to take into account that UMBC did play one of the weaker strength of schedules in all of college basketball. Now, I love what DJ Turn It Up Armstrong brings to the table. 13 points, and he shoots 42% from 3. Ace Valentine, he's been able to give you the team 12 points per game, but you really only have one guy, Josh Oda Ono, who's been able to give you 8.5 points, 5 boards. He and Jose Robert Chachwin gives you 5.7 rebounds per game. Lone two guys on the roster that give you over 4.1 boards per contest. Now, UMBC not allowing a lot of second and third chances, but they're not grabbing a lot of those for themselves. And for Howard, I do think that they're going to have a little bit of an edge down low. They have been a top 100 team with their rebound percentage. Bryce Harris, Cedric Taylor, both of these guys have been able to combine for about 13.3 rebounds per game. They both give you 17.1 points per game. Between the two of them, they're giving you 2.5 steals, 2.4 blocks per game. With Harris, he shoots 37% from 3. I think that he's the most complete overall player in this game. Then Cam Gillis, he's been able to shoot 38% from 3-point range. Main kryptonite you have with Howard is turnovers. They're right around about 341st in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but UMBC outside the top 255 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis themselves. Howard is allowing teams to shoot less than 30.5% for 3. They've been a top 15 team in the country with that regard, and I think that wins out here for Howard. And Howard also a top 15 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense. So I think that you get a bit of a slug. Set my line at a 2.5 with Howard being the favorite. So I'm going to bypass the points and take them outright on the money line. And I do like this total to the under as well. And then we've got 663, 664. This is NC State taking on Texas. And Texas, they are back. They're anywhere between a 1.5 point favorite to a 1.5 point underdog. We've got sort of dueling favorites here. And total on this game is anywhere between 158.5 to 159.5. And with NC State, I did set them as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. These are two really wretched defenses right now. As for NC State, in games played away from home, they are 363rd out of 365 teams in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 40.8%. Texas is 361st at 40.5%, so equally as bad there. NC State, in games played away from home, 309th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Texas is 346th, and I recognize that neither of these teams are playing at warp speed. For Texas, they're about 176th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. NC State is 121st, but I do like the over. I did set my total at a 162, as I do think that both of these offenses are going to be able to flourish. And in the case of NC State, they shoot 41.4% from three-point range away from them. That's second in the country overall in terms of points per possession in a road/neutral venue. They are number 4 in all of college basketball. It's a Texas team with Mateus Volkaitis down low, give you 16-plus points, 7-plus rebounds per game. Dalen Swain has been a complete player, 3 assists, 17 points, 6-plus rebounds per game. But Tremont Mark, he continues to shoot only about 30 or so percent from three. Now it's a Texas team that has been very rock solid with regards to their offense as well. You look at them in terms of points per possession, they're right around about 22nd in the country. That takes a little bit of a dip away from them, but still, they've been able to do a solid job with that regard. But I do think that for NC State, they're going to be able to do a nice job in terms of controlling this game with having so many different guys, a quartet of different guys, between 13.8 and 13.9 points per game. Van Allen Lubin, 14.7 boards, he's the main rebounder for this team. And then your other three guys give you between 3.5 and 4.6 rebounds per game. Darian Williams, Paul Aaron McNair, and Kadir Copeland. With Copeland at 6'6", great versatility, 14 points, 6.5 assists, shoots 40% from three. One thing I can say for NC State is that they've been okay in terms of generating turnovers. A top 110 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense. On offense, a top 25 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Let's say that you get into a pressure spot, they shoot 76.8% at the free throw line. That is a top 45 mark in all of college basketball. While this is a Texas team that they've got some relatively good attributes of their own, this is a team that I just don't think that they necessarily quite compare. They shoot more like 75% of the free throw line. They are outside the top 110 with regards to taking care of the ball, and they are well outside the top 330 in terms of generating turnovers. So I made my total 162, like the over, and for NC State, whether they're a 1-point favorite or a 1-point dog, I'll take them on the money line as a dog. If I have to lay one, I will lay one. Now we hit the NIT games. This is 665, 666. George Mason, the home team against Liberty, and Liberty is a 5.5-point underdog. Total on this game, 144.5 to 145.5. I like the over. I set my total 148.5. Now, these are two super slow teams. For George Mason, 350th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Liberty is 342nd, but both of these teams should be able to get a lot of good looks from three. As Liberty, they are lighting it up from three. They shoot 39.2% from three, 6th in the country, 360th in opponent's three-point shooting percentage at 38.3%. Have a George Mason team that has been relatively solid with their offense. They're 92nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They've been very good in terms of getting to the free throw line. Liberty will not put you at the free throw line too much, so I do think that helps out Liberty in this ordeal. But even with that, George Mason, top 100 team with their 2-point shooting percentage as well. Corey Mincy shoots 39.5% from three, 14 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Jahari Long throws in their 12 points, 4 assists per game, and George Mason, top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. They don't put you under duress. They're outside the top 250 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. George Mason overall has been a top 125 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's a little bit touch and go. Liberty is not going to give themselves second chances. 5.7 offensive rebounds per game. That is dead sinking last in all of college basketball, but they have, with that 3-point shooting, also a top 10 mark with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage as well. Brett Decker, well, he's been decking teams by shooting 48% from three, 17 points per contest. Zach Cleveland doesn't really give you a lot from the outside, but a 6'6", 6'7" point forward that supplies about 12 points, 7.5 boards, 7 assists. So he does a bit of everything. Caden Matheny, he's been able to shoot 40% from three, 13.5 points per contest. So all these guys have been able to do a pretty rock solid job with that regard. It is a George Mason team that they're solid in terms of guarding the arc. I wouldn't necessarily call them like stupendous or anything like that. Certainly they're a little bit better than our good friends here in Liberty, but that's up for George Mason. They are allowing teams to shoot about 32.5% from three, 89th in the country. I think that Liberty does enough to be able to keep things clean, to be able to hold in this game, and I do think they get a lot of made shots. So set my total 148.5, like the over, and the points here with Liberty, 667, 668. UNC Wilmington is on the road against Yale. Yale's a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. 146.5 to 148 is the total. Set a total of a 146.5, so 147 plus, I do like the under. Both of these teams are playing relatively slowly as well. With Yale, in terms of total possessions per game, 302nd. Wilmington is 300. So they play at the very same tempo. And for Yale, they have been tremendous on offense. Top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are one of the best 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball as well at 39.5%. That's a top 5 mark in the country. But UNC Wilmington, 5th in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage at 29.5%. And they're 22nd in terms of overall rebound percentage. Now, Yale's 39th as well. So there shouldn't be a lot of second and third chances in this game, and that's a big reason why I do like the under, and I think that will help UNC Wilmington hold in there. Now, UNC Wilmington, not great on the inside. They're outside the top 240 with their own two-point shooting percentage. Top 85 team in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, but Patrick Wessler should be the most dominant low-post presence in this game. Comes over from Virginia Tech, 14 points, 9.5 boards, and a block as a true 7-footer. And then the ancillary pieces, Madison Durr, Christian May, they combine for about 20.7 points per game with Mayday. He's able to shoot about 36% from three. And then Nolan Hodge is a 39.5% three-point shooter, supplies the team with about 14.5 points per game. On the flip side for Yale, have to love what you've been able to get out of Isaac Salazar, combined with your top scorer Nick Townsend. Townsend shoots 47% for three, 7.5 boards, 16.5 points per game. Salazar, 13 points, 6 boards, shoots 37% from three. Should be relatively clean on both fronts for Yale. They're a top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, outside the top 200 in terms of generating turnovers. For UNC Wilmington, they've been a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, right around about 275th in terms of generating turnovers themselves. So you should have clean possessions here. For Wilmington, do have to fear a little bit the fact that they shoot 68.7% at the free throw line, but Yale doesn't put you to the free throw line. A top 20 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed per game. I actually think that helps out Wilmington in this spot. So I'm going to line at 2.5, so won't take the points with Wilmington, and they might total a 146.5, so 147 plus becomes my buy point on the under. 669, 670, you've got Wyoming on the road against Wichita State, and Wichita State a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favor. Total on this game, it is 148.5, and I did set my total at 145.5. I like the under for Wyoming. If you look at overall total possessions per game this season, they're hovering right around about 266th in the country. Prior to Christmas, they were a top 100 team. That indicates that in conference play, they were well outside the top 300 with this regard. They have really slowed down. Wichita State has sped themselves up. They began the season very, very slowly. They're now about a country average team, 165th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these teams have been able to do a very good job on the glass. You've got a Wichita State team that, in terms of overall rebound percentage, 21st in the country, top 10 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Wyoming, they're top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, 35th in terms of overall rebound percentage, but I think that they're going to have a tough time with the Will Berg, who for Wichita State, he's a true 7-footer that's able to give you about 8 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Wyoming just doesn't have that sort of a guy. It's been a whole greater than some of its parts approach for Wyoming. You don't have a single guy, as a matter of fact, that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. A trio of guys, though, that have been able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game. Bataja Belzik, unfortunately, is dealing with injury, so they're going to be looking to 2 guys in Caden Bennett and Nasir Meyer. They've been able to combine for about 23 points, 9.7 rebounds per game, and both guys shooting the mid-30s from 3, combined 35.5% from the outside. Then we've had Demarion Dennis give you about 11.3 rebounds per game, but for Wyoming, they've been a little bit lackadaisical on the defensive side things outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis because they are getting land-based down low. They're outside the top 240 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Now for Wichita State, they've been outside the top 200 with their own two-point shooting percentage, but I do think that they're going to excel there. Wichita State currently finds themselves in the top 55 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and really good at guarding the arc. 31.2% is what teams shoot from 3 against them. That is a top 55 mark in the country. We've got Keenan Giles, who gives you 19 points, shoots 38% from 3. He's the best scorer in this game. Keron Boyd, 10.5 points, shoots 34.5% from 3. If you have a little bit of strife with this Wichita State team, they do shoot just 69% of the free throw line. That could come into play in a little bit of a tight spot, but I think with everything that they've got down low, they do find a way to be able to persevere at home. So my line at 7.5, so we'll lay up to 7 with Wichita State, and I like the under. I set my total at a 145.5, 671, 672. It's Davidson. They are going to be on the road against Oklahoma State. Cowboys are an 8.5 point favorite, so it's between 155.5 to a 157, and I like the under. Set my total 153.5. Total tempo war here. Oklahoma State is 7th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Davidson is 355th, but Davidson is doing a supreme job of guarding the three-point line. Teams in games played away from home shoot 28.8% from 3 points against them. Top 10 mark in the country. Parsafala, the number 2 scorer for Oklahoma State, and top rebounder, 14.7 points over 6 rebounds per game. He is out. He missed the final 5 games of the regular season. His season is done, and that helps out a Davidson team that really doesn't have a lot of rebounding. You've got one guy that gives you over 3.8 rebounds per game. That'd be Josh Govins, 11 points, 4.3 rebounds per game, and for Davidson, your top scorer is Robert Blums with 12 points per game. Does shoot 40% from 3, but you just get it from pretty much everyone on this team. You've got 7 different guys that give you at least 5.6 points per game. Parker Frederickson shoots 41% from 3, 10.5 points per game. You've had Hunter Adam shoot about 38% from 3, 5.5 points per contest. So just a lot of mixers and shakers. Meanwhile, for Oklahoma State, things are centered around Anthony Roy, who gives you 17 points, 4 boards. He's been shooting about 40% from 3, and then you're going to need to have the ancillary guys step up with a follow-up injury. Kane Cleary along Jalen Curry in the backcourt. These two guys are combining for about 20.5 points per game, combined about 33.5% from three-point range. And Oklahoma State just barely inside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, about 96th in the country. They've been letting themselves down a little bit more on the defensive side of things. You take a look at this team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it has been up, down, all around, 232nd in the country. I do think that Davidson going to do a nice job setting themselves up. Now, the big thing for Davidson is that they have actually been really bad at the free throw line. This team shoots 65.3% of the free throw line. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball, but I've also been a top 175 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. This is an Oklahoma State team that's been well outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I think that keeps Davidson lively in this game. I think that Davidson going to get a little bit more of their slow tempo. So semi-total 153.5, like the under, and anything of 8+ here with Davidson set them as a 7.5 point dog. 673, 674. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is on the road. They're facing up against Tulsa. Tulsa is a 7.5 point favorite total on this game, 154.5 to 155.5. I do like the under at total at a 146. Stephen F. Austin has been playing at a pretty slow pace this season in terms of total possessions per game. They are checking in 301st in the country. Tulsa's been really efficient on offense. Top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Top 10 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. About 135th in terms of total possessions per game. So it's not like they're playing super duper slow, but it's not like they're absolutely gunning it or anything like that. And for Stephen F. Austin, they've been really good in terms of guarding the three-point line. They're allowing teams to shoot just a hair above 30% from three-point range. They've been a top 45 team with that regard. And for Stephen F. Austin, this is a team that absolutely mauls on glass, a top 45 team with regards to rebound percentage. This is headlined by the fact that Jared Colonel along Krishan Christmas have been able to combine for about 14.2 rebounds per game. Between the two of them, only about 11.3 points per game, but Colonel throws in their 2.5 blocks per contest as well. Keaton Thompson has all sorts of versatility, 18 points, about 5 boards, 4.5 assists, shoots about 32% from three. Stephen F. Austin as a whole actually shoots 36.3% from three. That's a top 75 mark in the country. And for Stephen F. Austin, the big thing for them is that they don't want to go to the free throw line. They shoot 68% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. In Tulsa, they have been very good at the free throw line. This team is collective. They're shooting about 78.1%. That's a top 20 mark in the country. And you've got a trio of guys, Miles Barnstable, David Green, along Tylen Riley, who have been able to do a great job just in tandem of combining for about 45.5 points per game. Barnstable shoots 42% from three, 88% of the free throw line. Green shoots 40% from three, throws in there 4.5 boards. And then Riley, he gives you also about 4 boards, 4 assists, and he shoots 40.5% from three-point range. The mixers and shakers have been guys like Tyler Bennard along with Ian Michael. These two guys combine for about 9 rebounds per game, so they help out there. And it's a Tulsa team that's been pretty solid on the inside. Top 100 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Top 75 team with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, but not going to put you under duress outside the top 250 in terms of generating turnovers. I do think that this game is going to be slowed down. Stephen F. Austin is not going to allow for a lot of open opportunities, and that keeps them lively in this game. I set my line at 4. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, who their defense travels even better. They're a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home, so do like the under, so my total 146.5 to go with those points with Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. 675, 676. You've got Auburn, and they're going to be playing those to South Alabama. South Alabama, underdog of 17.5 points. 153.5 to 155 is the total line. I set my total here at a 154. Personally, I would rather take that 153.5 over rather than like a 154.5 to the under, mainly because Auburn is just so bad on defense. They're 99th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And South Alabama, though they might not be like some sort of an offensive dynamo or anything like that, they're not bad themselves. They're about 156th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But if you look at them in a road/shoot score venue, that does ascend to the top 75 in the country, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be looking to take the points. Now for South Alabama, they absolutely dare you to shoot from three-point range, and by that I mean if you take a look at the opponent's field goals, 64.3% of them come from three-point range. To put this into perspective, the next highest percentage for any team is 52.3%. So they are just daring you to shoot from three. In Auburn, they're a so-so three-point shooting team at 33.8%. Now that ascends to 36.1% at home, but let's call it what it is. So Hodge Pettiford has not really given you too much for this Auburn team from the outside. He has still been able to supply about 14 points, 3 assists, gives you a few rebounds, but I need from three-point range has shot 29.9%. Deshaun Hall has been Mr. Do-It-All. 20 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists. He shoots 38% from three. Kevin Overton shoots 38.5% from three, 13.5 points per game, but I have to wonder if there's going to be perhaps an opt-out or two from this roster. Probably not going to be seeing as much of that from a South Alabama team that they're just a very complete team. You've got the Chaz Harris giving you 19 points, 4.5 boards, 5 assists. Adam Olson throws in there 16 points per game. You've got a lot of guys that maybe don't score a ton, but they just contribute to the cause. Someone like a J.J. Weed who only gives you 3.5 points per game, gives you darn near a steal per contest. Randy Brady, 5.5 points, 5.5 boards, 1.3 steals per contest. As it's a South Alabama team as well that has been very good in terms of generating turnovers. They're a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Now, South Alabama, terrible at the free throw line. They shoot 66% at the free throw line, but they themselves have been able to do a solid job with their interior defense, top 150 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I think that they're going to be up for the task here, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with South Alabama. Made them a underdog here of 16 points, and at a 153.5 or less, I like the over. 677, 678. Seattle is going to be playing those to St. Thomas. St. Thomas does find themselves as an underdog of 1.5 to 2.5 points. 146.5 to 148 is the total. I do like the under. I set my total at 143.5. You have a Seattle team that honestly doesn't play super duper slow. 189th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. St. Thomas, 152nd in terms of total possessions per game. St. Thomas has been great with their offense. They are 38th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They actually lead the country in terms of 2-point shooting percentage against a Seattle team that has been doing a great job in terms of generating turnovers. Seattle, they are 10th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, 20th in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, but St. Thomas, top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. I think that that's going to undo that really good Seattle defense, and that's a big reason why I do like them outright on the money line. And for Seattle, they just have not been able to find anything on offense whatsoever. They're outside the top 245 with regards to their own 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They've been a team that's been about 200th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They don't give themselves second chances. They're outside the top 300 with that regard. And St. Thomas, they're a bottom 15 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, so there's not going to be a lot of second and third chances to be had in this game. But for Seattle, it's really up to Braden Maldonado to get the offense going. 14.5 points, shoots 36.5% from three-point range. He is the only one out of their top 4 scorers that shoots above 29% from three. Now, John Chrysophilus is coming off the bench, shot 37.5% for three, only for about 6 points per contest. They've got someone like a John Succhio who's been able to give you 12 points, 4 boards, and it's a rock-solid defense, but for St. Thomas, doing the little things well, it's exactly been the forte of this team, as you got Noah Minsale, who's been able to give you 20 points, 4.5 assists. He shoots about 31% for three. It's a St. Thomas team that has been really good in terms of guarding the three-point line themselves. They're allowing teams to shoot less than 31% for three, top 55 mark in the country. And while this is a St. Thomas team that they don't give themselves any sort of second and third chances whatsoever, they're not going to allow you to be able to get a lot of second and third chances either. 40th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, games played away from home. They allow opponents to grab only about 24.7% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That's more of a top 35 mark in the country. Carter Bijurke, he's been a really nice go-to scorer with about 45.5% three-point shooting, 9.5 points per contest. Nick Jankowski throws in there 16 points, 5 rebounds per game. With Seattle just as bad as they are on offense, they're in 8th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I think that you get an under, and with the way that St. Thomas does a great job in terms of doing the little things, taking care of the ball, being able to hit their shots on the inside, I think that they get the job done in what is going to be their first postseason game at the Division I level. Tore it up at the Division III level for a very long time. I think that they're going to be motivated here. So I like St. Thomas on the money line, and I like the under, so my total 143.5, and wrap things up with 679, 680. UC Irvine, zot the Anteaters, play goes to UNLV. UNLV anywhere between a 2.5 to a 3.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is up to now a 152.5 to a 153, and I like the under. I set my total at a 150.5. Now you do have two teams that are going to be looking to push some tempo. For UNLV, 63rd in terms of total possessions per game. Irvine is 50th, but neither of these teams have been amazing on offense. UNLV is up to about 120th in terms of points per possession. UC Irvine is 281st, but for UC Irvine, number 1 in the country in terms of opponents, 2-point shooting percentage, 9th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and UNLV away from home, they're a top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. UC Irvine about 263rd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, so that's a little bit of an issue. We'll say this for UNLV, they've actually been able to shoot it quite well from three-point range when they've been away from home. UNLV shoots 33.2% from three-point range at home, 37.4% away from home, and I do think that keeps them lively in this game. I'm going to be willing to take the points with UNLV, set them as a 2.5 point dog, so I'm going to need at least 3 in this game, and for UNLV, they should have their full allotment of guys, as Trey Gibbs Lawhorn has been incredible for this team. He's put the team on his back with about 20.5 points per contest, shooting 42% from three. In conference play, he was averaging 23.6 points per game, and then down low, you've got Tyron Jones, who's been able to supply 11.5 points, 5 boards, 2 blocks per game. Kamani Hamilton is able to give you 5 rebounds per game. Now, it is a UNLV team. If you look at percentage of their field goal attempts that come from inside the three-point line, top 100 team there, so Irvine's strong defense down low role that's really going to be coming into play. And for this UC Irvine team, they've been able to get a lot out of Kyle Evansalmo. This guy is supplying about 12 points, 8.5 boards, and 3.3 blocks per game. That is a top 10 mark in the country. Jurion Dixon throws in there 16 points. He shoots 39% from three. And overall, Irvine, a country average team, shooting about 34% from three-point range. But let's say that you get into a pressure spot, they shoot just 69.2% the free throw line. And this is a UNLV team that is a top 35 team in terms of percentage of opponents' possessions that end in a free throw. So they're not afraid to foul. It is an Irvine team that they themselves have been a top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. So I think that there's going to be a lot of sloppiness in this game. Willing to take the under, and with UNLV, willing to take 3+ with them. And that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Davidson family podcast. A big thanks to Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters the name does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm with you guys every single day, giving you picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.